Hi, folks. This is Abel James, and welcome to the Fat Burning Man Show, where we talk about real food and real results. Today's special episode of the show is with Alisa Vitti, the author of The Woman Code. We have a heck of a lot of fun talking about all sorts of things. I'll get to that in a second. But before we do, I wanted to let you guys know I'm finally back from Thailand. It was an awesome vacation, in case you were wondering. We all need one of those from time to time. And we were sucking down coconuts, drinking snake blood, eating bugs, doing all sorts of weird stuff. I'm going to be writing a few blog posts about that at my blog at fatburningman.com. Before we get to the show, I wanted to let you know that if you like this show, then please just take a moment to subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you haven't yet left a review, I would really appreciate it if you could. So it's just Fat Burning Man on iTunes. You can get to me in all sorts of different ways, but please click subscribe if you haven't already, and you'll automatically get all of our episodes of the show. And I really appreciate all the reviews that have come this way. We've been dominating the iTunes charts lately. The latest episode with Jonathan Baylor has been up there with Jillian Michaels, fighting for the #1 spot once again, which is kind of cool because she's talking all about why calories matter so much and why you need to be miserable to work them off. And we're kind of talking about the opposite, why calories don't matter and why you can be happy. So it's nice to see that dichotomy between the two. All right, on to the show with Alisa. We talk about decoding the cycle for relationship success, how women can optimize their hormones, dealing with low libido and how to feed your adrenals, and most importantly, what men should know about women. I think we could all use a hand there. All right, let's go hang out with Alisa. All right, folks, today we're here with Alisa Vitti, who's the best-selling author of Woman Code and the founder of FlowLiving.com, a virtual health center that supports women's hormonal and reproductive health. And you may know her most exceptionally from recently getting Dr. Oz to talk about periods on national television. How's it going, Alisa?
Hi, Abel. It's great. Yes. If I can talk about periods with Dr. Oz on national television, there is nowhere can't go with this subject.
So it's going to be an interesting interview then. But firstly, let's talk about that. How did that go?
That was so much fun. He is, I think it was really great for him to be able to say out loud that he's never gone here before, sort of subject material wise, and for us to do a segment that was so visual.
Yeah.
What was so groundbreaking about the segment was that I actually showed using fruit juices, not to make anybody squeamish. We simulated these, and I teach this all the time at my center. Women just don't know what to look for, every month. And they don't even know that they should be looking at it.
Yeah.
But there are these 4 typical patterns of colors and textures that really indicate to women, how they're doing with estrogen and progesterone balance, and what they need to do about that in the short term and long term is where my protocol comes in around using food to make those things work better.
Right. That's awesome. Well, firstly, let's start a little bit more awkward than that even, and go into a lot of things that happen, especially I have a lot of people in the paleo, CrossFit type community that listen to this show. And one of the most sought after things for a lot of folks who are CrossFitters especially is the 6-pack on women. And that's not always...
Strong is sexy.
Right. That's not always the best case scenario when you're talking about menstrual cycles or actually being fertile at all. So I would love to hear your perspective on all of that as it enters into body image and actual health.
Well, listen, for every person it's different, but for women, we do need to have a particular, and it's a small amount of body fat to help us with hormone stabilization. So if you're a woman who can do with a very small amount and you're still cycling monthly, then go for it. Go for the 6-pack, go for everything. But if you're noticing that as you're losing body fat, that symptoms of PMS are getting worse, your period is stopping, you're having other issues like acne or hair loss or just weird changes in your body, then your hormones are not happy. And it isn't, should you buy the right potions and lotions to make those symptoms go away? It's more about how can we use dietary sources of fat to help our hormones be more stable. So sometimes actually the case for a lot of women is that the more fat they eat, the more body fat they lose. And in that case, you can be very, very thin, but with the right dietary intake of good essential fatty acids, your hormones can be very, very happy.
Awesome. What sorts of fats do you recommend?
I recommend, from a vegan standpoint, coconut for the medium chain triglycerides, avocado, of course, is like the gold standard, especially for women who are trying to conceive.
Hmm.
There was a study done for women who were doing IVF. And IVF has such a high failure rate that they found that women who ate 3 avocados per week during an IVF cycle versus women who did not had a 3.5 greater success outcome.
Really?
That's major when you're talking about the investment of time,
Sure.
emotional, physical, and financial that you're
Right.
putting into these things. I feel like they should put a poster of an avocado on every IVF center, because if they're not, it's kind of irresponsible.
Yeah.
Food really makes a huge difference. So those are ones I love. I love organic pasture-fed egg yolks for
Yeah.
women. So critical. I would say those are my top three. And then, I love having women move into the nut category as long as they're organic and you're, refrigerating them so they don't grow
Yeah.
any weird molds or things.
Right.
Those can be really, really good. Yeah.
Cool.
But of all of the nuts, I would say sunflower seeds are my favorite simply because they're high in zinc, and zinc is really important in your body being able to use hormonal data in
Yeah.
the glands and in the cells.
So a lot of what you cover in your book is optimizing hormones through nutrition. What's a good way to understand that?
Think about it like this. There's a code in the way in which your endocrine system functions from head to ovaries. And of course, I focus exclusively on women, but
Right.
this is a conversation for men too, because if men crack the woman code, there's a lot of good that can come from that.
That's why I have this book right here, just in
Yes.
case.
That's why I'm on your show. I love what you're doing. And I think, men and women can really appreciate how to be more successful in their health, but also their
Yeah.
relationships when they're understanding their bioindividuality much, much more. So there is this code. It's this chemical language of hormones that exists in women, and it creates cyclical hormonal patterns each week of a 30-day cycle. And there is a way to use food as, let's say, like a lever to, some people call it hacking, biohacking.
Hmm.
And in a way, I do teach women to hack their hormones, but that's such a masculine term.
It is.
It is like, we don't want to hack anything. We don't want to go in there with a pitchfork. We're not so aggressive. We want to have them work for us better. We
Right.
want to have them, we
You want
want
to
to be able
nurture
to
them.
stimulate them in a way that makes us happier and healthier.
Yeah.
So that's primarily what it is. And I have a protocol that uses a food sequencing technique and a cyclical eating technique that helps women, sort of get hormonal alignment established in the first place and then maintain it. So this will allow someone to, completely recover from any menstrual disturbance whatsoever, whether that be something as simple as PMS, something more complicated like what I used to have, which was PCOS, fibroids, endometriosis, etc. Or, of course, if they're dealing with infertility, having had multiple rounds of IVF or miscarriages, they can get pregnant naturally, avoid postpartum depression. All of these things are possible by, getting access to their woman code.
Right. That's awesome. So how did you yourself get into this? Having PCOS is actually pretty common in this community. I know a lot of my listeners have struggled with it. How did you go from being at your unhealthiest to what you are today?
Well, my story is pretty, I would say typical of any PCOS woman from the beginning. I was over 200 pounds, covered face, chest, and back in cystic acne. I wasn't, and I like to do a little close up of my gorgeous skin now because having had, it used to take me like a half an hour in the morning to spackle to cover the
Wow.
red.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was intense. And, I get my period once or twice a year, exhausted, depressed, couldn't wake up in the morning, couldn't go to sleep at night. Just every circadian pattern of the body was just not working the way that it should. I would retain water oddly. I mean, just really, really bizarre. So I was a student at Johns Hopkins University on my way to becoming an OBGYN when I had just sort of hit the hormonal breakdown moment. And I just couldn't take it anymore. I'd been undiagnosed for 5 or 6 years, and things were getting, rapidly much, much worse. And you don't appreciate how hormones affect everything until they start affecting everything.
Right.
I wasn't functioning. I wasn't myself. I knew that I couldn't live the life that I wanted to with my hormones just misbehaving in such a profound way. So I did a little research and in the medical library to figure out what it was that I might have. And then I was able to go to my gynecologist the next day to get a confirmatory test and then actually have her confirm my own diagnosis, which was cool.
That's interesting.
And yeah, she's like, "Oh yes, you're right. You do have PCOS." I said, "Thank you very much. Thanks for helping."
Mm-hmm.
And
here's the bill.
yeah, no, she was great. She was very gracious. I basically like stalked her in the parking lot first thing in the morning. So it was cool of her to do that. But then the prognosis was, diabetes, obesity, infertility, heart disease, cancer, and not to worry because we could just medicate you for all of those things. Yeah. And so many women have these moments. I know that some of you who are listening have had this moment where you're basically faced with all this bad news and there's no fix, but there's masking tape. Here's a Band-Aid, here's some drugs. Maybe it'll make you feel a little bit better, but it's not going to give you your life back. Yeah. And you really are faced with the choice in that moment. And for me, I really felt that in every cell of my body. And every cell of my body was telling me that future of drugs and more being unwell was just not for me. Right. And that was the moment where, my life really began to change in a lot of ways, and I sort of embarked on a 3-year journey of studying nutritional genomics and functional medicine and putting this protocol together and watching my body. Once I figured out the protocol, it took me a couple of years to get it organized. Once I figured it out, within a year, my body lost, the 60 pounds, my skin cleared up, my cycles returned, my sleeping restored, my moods lifted, all of that. And I just thought, oh my goodness, holy ovaries, I have to help other women. I really do. And the center was born, out of that. So I've been in clinical practice for 12 years and it was just this year that I decided to write a book. So it's really a joy to be having this conversation with so many more women because, I'm just back from a worldwide book tour and, having women come 3 hours by train to meet me and to get information. It isn't about me. It's just about the fact that these women, we need support. We need to be shown how to use our hormones to our benefit because if we're not having them work for us, they are absolutely working against us. And I don't need to tell you how the epidemic is growing of women with issues. Over 40 million women in the US alone are struggling with conditions like mine, infertility, low sex drive. It's not getting any better. It's getting worse. Right. And we need help.
So women are complicated. And you encounter quite a few of them.
Elegantly complex.
Okay.
Try saying that next time.
So, how did you crack the code? Everyone is so different. What do you do in order to optimize hormones and get everyone's life in order?
Well, that's the cool thing. And I explain this a lot in my book because that's always sort of the question I get is, well, if everybody's so different, how can one protocol work? And it was in my research that I just kept sort of coming up to the reality that the endocrine system is the endocrine system. Yeah. It is reliable. It is predictable. It has specific pathways in which it does what it's meant to do. Mm-hmm. Now, you're individual because of epigenetic factors, lifestyle factors. That's what makes you individual. But the structure of your body, is how it is, right? So there is a way for you to use food to help the endocrine pathways work the way that they're meant to. So for example, in everyone's case, whatever epigenetic history you have, whatever lifestyle factors you have, your endocrine system is a great example of why one protocol works for these women. Your endocrine system's primary focus, whether you have ovaries or testicles, it's the same, is to safeguard the transport of glucose between the brain, the heart, and the muscle tissue. That is the first thing it wants to do. And any of you listening who are Star Trek fans, this is your endocrine system's prime directive. I am a Star Trek fan.
Cheers to that.
Yes. Your prime directive of your endocrine system is to make sure that your brain, your heart, your muscle tissue has sugar. And in fact, there are several different subsystems within the endocrine system that are there to help just in case something goes wrong with blood sugar stability for those 3 organs, right? So that's the first thing. So of course, if we're going to think about helping the endocrine system let's say on the level of the period or fertility or sex drive, get to a place where we can even start addressing those issues. First things first, we have to do the things in the right sequence. We have to stabilize blood sugar.
Yeah.
And if you do anything before that, like, I don't know, some crazy juice cleanse, fresh vegetarian detox, ridiculousness first,
Yeah.
at first, and you're not stabilizing blood sugar, you're not going to get better. You're just not. And I've seen it over and over and over again. So that's sort of, an example of how. And then, of course, you move into the adrenal support, you move into pathways of elimination, and then you move into the actual working with estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, all of those hormones.
Yeah. So if I'm a woman who is listening to the show right now and I'm completely jacked up in the way that you were before, right? You had all sorts of problems. You didn't know which ones are connected, which ones weren't. Where do you start?
I think you just start with paying attention to where you're experiencing a lot of suffering. So if that's around your period, try to pinpoint what. Is it your moods? Is it, physical issues like weight gain or acne, or just to get some sense of the scope and the depth of the issue? Is it that I would even suggest that you spend the next full cycle kind of just tracking each week how you're feeling and doing from, let's say, a mood stability standpoint, elimination. Some women experience cyclical constipation. How's that going? How's your skin? Are you breaking out at a certain time? And just track it. Doesn't have to be where you are in your cycle. Just start tomorrow, 7 days, 7 days, 7 days, 7 days, and just see how you're doing and put what's going on with your cycle in the mix.
Yeah.
But give yourself that 4-week period to see what's going on. And then from there, it's really about looking at the food. Once you understand what's happening with your symptoms and you recognize that there's an issue, you're ready to take action and change how you eat to make your hormones happy.
What should you absolutely not eat?
You should absolutely not eat soy.
I'm glad
I say that like unabashedly, unequivocally. If you are a woman and you're in your reproductive years and you are dealing with any of these issues, and let me just be clear, ladies, PMS is a serious condition. 2009, National Institute of Health came out with a very important study called the Biocycle Study. And something as innocuous, or let's say it's the butt of our common jokes, right? To say PMS, ha, 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 stay away from me, whatever, right? That's happening. If that's happening, we now know that there are unequivocal linkages between something like as simple as PMS in your 20s and 30s and post-menopausal increase in heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and Alzheimer's. I don't think that's funny at all.
No.
And, I would really take it seriously if you've got any issue, like you have a period problem or an infertility, but if you also have PMS, I want you to take note. And, the thing to really make sure that you're doing is avoid soy for sure, because we have too much research about the damage that can be affected on a physical structure. For example, GMO soy has been shown in lab studies to change the shape of the uterus and make it less hospitable for conception.
Yeah.
So unless you're really sure that your soy is organic, fermented, and GMO free, I wouldn't even bother. And of course, if you're dealing with these issues, chances are excellent that you have estrogen dominance, excessive levels of estrogen in the body, and you don't want to be putting more into your system to begin with.
Right. What about men with estrogen dominance? Because that can happen if you overdo it on the soy protein powder too.
I have to say, this is, I have nothing but good vibes for my ex-boyfriend, but we did a little experiment. This was many, many years ago now. And now I'm happily married. But with this last partner that I had, he was curious about becoming vegan and all of this. And I said, well, let's do a 30-day experiment with you on soy.
Sure.
He did soy protein, he did tofu, he did like maybe 2 servings a day, 1 to 2 servings a day for a month. I can attest to the fact that his sex drive went completely away.
Really?
In 30 days. It has profound effects on your testosterone levels. And in fact, a lot of men struggle with maintaining testosterone, right? A
Right.
lot of testosterone will easily convert into estrogen if you don't have adequate mineral levels in the body as a man, specifically zinc,
Hmm.
and vitamin D3, so which are easily missing in most Americans' diets.
Right.
So, I would not add fuel to the fire if you're struggling to put on lean muscle mass. If you notice that you're like doing a zillion push-ups and you're not bulking up and you're doing everything right, stay away from the soy. And you may also want to think about how you can improve estrogen metabolism with something as simple as including cilantro
Hmm.
in a smoothie or in your salads. It's a powerful liver detoxifier, helps with estrogen metabolism, and it's good for guys.
Yeah, that's very cool. So, what we're kind of going there anyway, but what can a man do to understand everything that he should understand about a woman's body and her cycle, whether it's his sister, mother, significant other, anything like that? What's critical for a man to know in this sort of circumstance?
Well, first and foremost, hormones are not the enemy. They're not your enemy. They're not going to ruin your relationship. And I love saying that because, I have heard, I've been talking to a lot of guys on my book tour, different interviews, and they've said so often, wow, if I had only had this information sooner, maybe I would have had that relationship end.
Right.
And this is a little shocking for me to hear, I guess simply because I've been living on my own protocol for 15 years. I know that it doesn't show up in my relationship in that way. But I do love saying when I go out and speak to women that my husband, we don't keep like I don't know, a honeydew or a chore list at home.
Yeah.
He just tracks where I am in my cycle, right?
Really?
And then he's able to plan, what kinds of dates we're going to have. Are we eating out? Or are we eating in? What kind of sex are we going to have? Is it a lot of foreplay or not any foreplay? What kind of activities are we going to do? It all is very much in alignment with my changing neurochemistry and physiology. And so for him, he's always, let's use a little, what is it, Charlie Sheen term? He's always winning in our relationship because he knows where I'm at.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but any guy I know wants to feel like he's getting it right with women because it's just much better that way. So really,
I can attest to that. Yeah.
lower stress levels, better for your cortisol.
That's right.
So, I would say the first thing to do is, there's a great chapter in the book in chapter 5. It's called From Vicious Cycle to Delicious Cycle.
Hmm.
And I outline really clearly, and this is useful for both men and women, what the 4 phases of the cycle are and how you can observe them without having to do anything, let's say, in really invasive or very specific, like taking your temperature in the morning, right?
Yeah.
So you can actually tell where a woman is by observing some basic physical cues in her cycle. And then, of course, if you're in relationship with a woman, you'll get to sense when the patterns are, more specifically, because you'll have more intimate access to other physical cues that you wouldn't normally have. So these things are really helpful in you gauging where she is. And then you can leverage understanding how her brain chemistry is being affected by estrogen, progesterone, testosterone for your benefit. There are certain times of the month to have conversations about wanting to do new things. There are certain times of the month where you want to bring up, honey, let's set up a budget for our household spending. You want to do that at the right time to have the most ease and effortless, sort of grace between the two of you. It's really a practical tool. I spent some time with John Gray, who's the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And he's got a new book out with a co-author from Harvard. She's a director of the Gender Intelligence Psychology Department there. And the book is called Work With Me. And it's a great book about, understanding these sort of like differences between men and women and the way they think in the workplace. And, we both really came together on the fact that, it isn't that we're trying to be the same. We're different and equal, and our differences are our strengths. And I want women and men to be appreciating what the unique, elegant complexity of a woman's body is all about so that they can use it for their benefit, for their successful relationship, for their health, if it's weight loss, if it's getting pregnant. If you're not thinking about hormones, you're missing 90% of the conversation.
Yeah. And it's so much about hormones. So what are, you mentioned some of the things that can happen or what you can notice during these different pieces of the cycle. What are some examples of that?
Sure. So let's say the woman is in her ovulatory phase, which is something that I think a lot of men, without realizing it, intuitively observe.
Right.
So this is actually designed, women are, physiologically primed to be most magnetic during this time. So if you're noticing that you're finding your girlfriend extra beautiful over the few days out of the month, it's her hormones that's making you feel this way. And, that's one way. Another way that you can tell is estrogen floods the brain at this time, making her very, very talkative. In fact, her communication skills are at a peak during ovulation. So she may initiate a lot more conversations with you during this time, or you may find that you are naturally drawn to having more conversations with her. Her energy levels are also going to be at their highest because testosterone has one of the two major peaks during this time of the cycle. So you may notice that if you're going to do a CrossFit workout with her, she's crushing it this week, versus a week and a half later, it will not be the same.
Mm-hmm.
So paying attention to sort of sex drive, mood, and energy levels can really be a great way for you to gauge without looking at anything else. Obviously one other major cue that women themselves use is the amount of cervical fluid that they see and observe. And you may notice this, of course, if you're intimate with your partner, but if you're not, and you're sort of paying attention to just how she is showing up, you can tell so much with mood, energy, and sex drive and stamina.
Yeah. So what do you do about that? So step one, realize where she is during the cycle. Number two, and then how do you react based upon like ovulation or not?
So, for example, if she's ovulating, a great thing to do, if, let's say you're in charge of organizing dinner for that night, make some raw food for the evening. Make a salad with some light proteins, lots of good, avocado, make something lighter. So that's going to support estrogen metabolism because estrogen is surging. But it's also going to sort of work with her energy. She's naturally energized because of testosterone, so she doesn't need this big, heavy meal, right? Yeah. So knowing even what to feed her is a way to work with it, right? To keep her hormones working right.
Yeah.
And then, if you're, let's say, it depends on what you need to be doing. So let's say you're wanting to be intimate, right? This is a time where you can show her your animal side, so to speak, right? You can, whatever fantasy she has, if it's 50 Shades of Grey or if it's whatever, God knows, everybody's different. But you can go for it because she's going to be the most primed for that physically.
Right.
And, this is, of course, I'm giving you the examples of when things are working well.
Sure.
Right? So let's take the opposite example of things not working well. So let's say she's struggling around ovulation and you notice she's having lots and lots of breakouts, or her sex drive is not having its peak, or she doesn't have a lot of energy, right? What do we do in that case? So, from the partner standpoint, you're going to want to support her with some good supplementation, especially like a B6 and a B5 to help calm down the adrenals. You may also want to incorporate things like cinnamon in her diet. Cinnamon absolutely helps with insulin levels and will help, anything that's reducing insulin levels will help promote ovulation. So it's something that you could just encourage her to do. Say, hun, I've noticed you're having a lot of symptoms around your ovulation. You're breaking out, you're moody. It may be that your estrogen's a little bit off. You may definitely want to encourage her to stay away from soy, altogether, and see how she does. So, it's even sometimes just being willing to bring up the conversation with your partner that could be helping her, giving her permission to start thinking about these things herself. So many women, and honestly, to me, it like warms my heart, this idea that men would help a woman start this conversation with her own body, because so often we're just, as women, cultured to think that, we should just ignore it, that suffering is part of being a woman, that we're not supposed to feel good all month. And there's really nothing that can be done aside from taking the pill.
Yeah.
We now know the pill has so many long-term repercussions that are not beneficial. And I'll give this one more clue because for men, because so many men have asked me about this question. I'll throw it in here for your listeners. That, if you're a guy and you've noticed that you've had some relationships not work out, and you happen to have just thought back now as I'm talking to you, tracing the dots back to it, everything was fine, and then she went off the pill for some reason or another. And then all of a sudden things just fell apart pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You're not crazy. It wasn't her, it wasn't you. It's the fact that when women take the pill, and this was done in a very famous, called the Sweaty T-shirt study.
Yeah.
It's in the that women who take birth control pills, their pheromone receptor sites for identifying an ideal opposite genetic partner are completely compromised. So normally when you're not on the pill as a woman, you're attracted to a male who provides you with genetic material that would create an offspring that has powerfully strong immune system, right? That's the whole purpose.
Right.
But when you're on the pill, you actually pick partners that have an immune system very close to yours. So you're not producing an offspring that has that good immunity.
Right.
And you go off the pill, and all of a sudden you literally are saying to yourself, I cannot stand the smell of my boyfriend, husband. I don't know what happened.
That's wild.
It's wild. So think about, on the one hand, guys think, oh, great, she's on the pill. We don't have to worry. But I would say you do have to worry for a couple reasons. One, what is her underlying hormonal imbalance that put her on that in the first place? Because if you are in a long-term relationship with her, down the road, that may be a big reason why she might struggle with infertility when it comes time for you guys to have a family. And secondly, she's on the pill and met you while she was on the pill. Like, I'd rather you guys meet, and then if you want to go on the pill, that's fine.
Yeah.
As long as you know you like each other's scent, and specifically she liking yours.
Right.
Versus, because that's the other thing. It's a big wild card. She may come off the pill and just absolutely cannot stand you.
I don't
and
like you anymore. That's a little bit uncomfortable.
Fun with hormones,
Big gulps, eh? All right. Yeah, so that's fascinating. What if you are on the pill, what does that do to your cycle? I mean, does it eliminate these sorts of mini cycles completely? Does it just kind of make them a little bit less so? Does it exaggerate certain things? What happens?
Yeah, when you're on the pill, you're not having any of the benefit of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone's all very much compromised.
Mm-hmm.
So, it basically keeps you in a state of suspended animation. So you're not really cycling, you're definitely not ovulating, you're not cycling. The breakthrough bleeding that you have when you stop taking the pill is just that. It's not even really a period.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not necessarily the best thing. And again, if you have underlying hormonal issues like PCOS, fibroids, other things, PMDD, and you've been on the pill for 15, 20 years, I just want you to take an opportunity before you're thinking about having kids to do a protocol like the Woman Code system to take 3 months, stay on the pill, take 3 months, get yourself hormonally organized from a food standpoint, and then in conjunction with your doctor, try going off the pill for 3 months to see how you're doing now in light of having changed your internal environment such that it might be hormonally stable, and see if those symptoms don't come back. And if they don't, then you're good. You've done some good cleanup work, and you can go on and off the pill at your discretion.
Yeah.
If, however, you go off the pill and you have some symptoms come back, you won't have all coming back if you've done the protocol first. But if you have some symptoms come back, then you need to stay off the pill and stay on the protocol for a little longer until you clear those up so that you can be on it safely.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're really not cycling at all, and therefore it's harder for you to engage this cyclical aspect of planning your food and your life around that. You can still do it, but it will be more artificial.
Yeah. Interesting. So what sort of things can you expect if you're a woman who's been on the pill for years, say, and then you go off? Do you become a different person? What happens?
It's different for every woman,
Yeah.
but I would say some women, if you don't do any sort of nutritional work prior to coming off the pill and you've had problems before, which is what led you to be on the pill in the first place, you should expect to have all those symptoms return. Think of it like this: you put your body like sort of on cryogenic freeze for a moment, right? And for as long as you're on the pill, whatever symptoms you were that led you to take it in the first place are just sort of hanging out, waiting for the synthetic hormones to leave your body.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, the other thing that's happening, so you're going to have a relapse of all those symptoms. But the other thing that's happening while you're taking the pill, which I think is also a big bummer, is you're basically becoming massively demineralized. And you're also having your testosterone levels profoundly affected, which is important if you're trying to build lean muscle mass, keep your sex drive up. You'll be stripped of vitamin D3, some of your B vitamins, zinc. You'll disrupt intestinal flora, and even vaginal flora can be disrupted. So good bacteria is not there to balance out the bad, and you can have all sorts of issues like chronic yeast infections, UTIs, gut dysbiosis. IBS can be inflamed. I mean, being on the pill has this very profound effect on the body. So
Yeah.
if you're on the pill and you've jumped around from pill to pill, hoping that you'd find one that would work for you, it's not you, it's the pill. Stop taking, try another course of that, and this drives me crazy. Women are like, well, it's me. I'll just find the right pill and then everything will be okay. No. It's the pill. Your body, there are plenty of women who cannot take synthetic hormones. And I think back to when the big hormone replacement therapy, the HRT thing happened with postmenopausal women, all that synthetic hormone that they were taking. Now, of course, the gold standard in any postmenopausal, even perimenopausal conversation about manipulating hormones is bioidentical hormones.
Yeah.
No one would dream of taking synthetic hormones.
Mm-hmm.
But yet women in their delicate reproductive years, even as young as 13 and 14, are taking synthetic hormones.
That's right.
And I don't know why we don't think that's all part of the same continuum, but we should.
So what do you recommend in that case then?
I recommend food. If you're using the pill to quote unquote treat a hormonal imbalance, then I would recommend instead, because it doesn't actually fix your hormonal balance, I would want you to use food to get at the root causes of why your endocrine system is not working right in the first place. Address that blood sugar, address those adrenals, address your liver, your large intestine, your lymphatic system, your skin, and then start to work on estrogen levels, follicular stimulating hormone. All these things can be supported by diet. And then contraception is a separate issue. Contraception is contraception. Mm-hmm. And, barrier methods are my favorite simply because there's so much also in research that's now linking exposure to bacteria, STDs, to increased rates of infertility.
Yeah.
So even if you're on the pill, if you're not with the guy you're going to be with forever or girl you're going to be with forever, you want to be using barrier methods anyway. So if you can't be on synthetic hormones, barrier methods are great.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's see. We have a few minutes left. I'd love to talk to you about adrenal issues and cortisol specifically.
Yes.
What do you do to get those in order?
I know, and it's like the bane of everybody's existence, those last few pounds, or even just starting to lose weight in the first place.
Right.
If you don't help to trigger cortisol dropping and DHEA levels rising, mm-hmm. it's hard for the body to start to even begin shedding excess weight. So, there are a couple things that you can do. My first line of defense is always mega dosing on vitamin B5. B is in boy. It helps nourish the adrenals. It's really, really powerful. Then I would also have you eat a ton of sunflower seeds as well for additional nutrients, but especially zinc can be nourishing for the adrenals. So that's sort of, let's say, on a immediate triage level.
Yeah.
Longer term, the way you actually heal adrenal or support adrenal health and heal from adrenal fatigue is by keeping sleep schedule really, really regulated, sleeping and waking at the same time every day, and blood sugar stability throughout the day by having meals at a particular time, like not ever missing, skipping, delaying meals is so important. The adrenals don't adapt to your life like your brain does.
Yeah. And
they work really well on a schedule. So if you know you're going to have to eat anyway during the day, I'd rather you just commit, to doing that. And the other thing I would have you do is eliminate caffeine altogether for a couple of months, 2 to 3 months. Caffeine really destroys adrenal, the opportunity for the adrenals to even begin healing.
Yeah.
And caffeine, as you may know, works in the way by preventing your body from breaking down adrenaline. Mm-hmm. And that's why you feel energized.
Right.
But it also increases levels of cortisol, and then and more your cortisol levels are increasing, DHEA levels are falling. Mm-hmm. So, I would really have you kind of think about those things in the short term. And then with your workouts, I always recommend, if you're dealing with adrenal fatigue, and how do you know if you're dealing with adrenal fatigue, right? Let's just start there for a quick second.
Yeah.
If if you notice you feel hungover in the morning when you're waking up and you didn't have any alcohol the night before, but and you feel kind of like you're dragging a little bit to get out of bed, you're hitting the snooze thing like a zillion times, and even after you get up, and even after a shower, and even after a cup of coffee, you're still like not fully on. This is stage 1, stage 2 adrenal fatigue. And then you notice you sort of wake up in the afternoon, later in the evening, you feel like you're a night owl. This is just inappropriate secretion of cortisol patterns throughout the day.
Yeah.
So if that's happening, you've got some adrenal fatigue. And when it comes to exercising, you don't want to push it. You want to do no more. And this is what I think is so great about CrossFit. The WOD is short if you can get through it, right? So you don't want to push it past 20 minutes of high intensity interval training, because you're going to burn out your adrenal reserve and you're going to make the problem worse.
Right.
So keep it short and sweet and get the job done, and you'll be okay.
You're speaking my language. I like that. Well, awesome. We're almost out of time, but why don't you tell folks what you're working on next and where they can find you? And of course, a little bit about your book, The Woman Code.
Yes. I love the happy purple book. Well, for me, I'm just excited to have the opportunity to support so many women. We take care of women in 6 continents, and we like to say our company's motto is have ovaries and an internet connection and we can help you. But we're also starting to help the men who love the women that they love, which is really great. But we've built this really cool thing online. So it's the world's first online hormone improvement platform. It's called the Woman Code System, and you can learn all about it by going to our website called flowliving.com/woman code. And you can learn about the book, and you can get some more, if you've liked what I've had to say, I have these really cool videos that I do every week about how you can hack your hormones or leverage your hormones, or depending on if you're a boy or a girl coming to the website, you'll be well taken care of. And for me, it's just all about how do we get more women feeling good all month and experiencing a new normal of health.
Right.
Because this thing that we do where we're thinking we have to suffer is just so, 2000 and late biblical, it's the future, and we need a healthcare model that really incorporates our body in a way that works for us.
Absolutely. Well, this has been awesome. Very informative for both the women and the men out there. So thank you so much for taking the time, and thanks for coming on. We'll definitely have to check in with you down the road to see what you're working on and give both men and women a bit more information about this crazy interplay between the two sexes.
I love it. Thanks for having me, Abel. This was so much fun.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.